Hey everybody, happy Sunday
Happy
and
Sunday.
welcome to a wonderful day. We are so happy to be here with each and every one of you. Let us get started because we are so excited about all that we have to share today. And so we will get started as we always do with an opening prayer. And today our prayer champion, Lavonda Elam, will lead us in prayer.
Great and beautiful Sunday celebration spiritual center and friends and family. It is great to be here with you, trusting that all is well where you are. So, from that place of trust, I invite you to tap in and tune inward with me as we bond together in consciousness through prayer this Sunday morning. Infinite beloved Spirit, as I sigh on the sweet gift of breath, I release yet another sweet gift of breath as I honor the eternal presence of oneness that is. I recognize that the only thing that need be known is that there is one life, and that life is God. That life is the I am of me. That life is the I am of each of you. That life is the I am of the collective we and of everything that belongs to it. And I am so grateful to know that this infinite life presence is never absent. It is constant in its care. It is unwavering in its love. And it is always shining its essence of peace, of power, of beauty, of scholarship, of wisdom, of strength, of intelligence in us, through us, and as us. And so as I accept this truth, I take comfort in this knowing as I affirm that as we live in the asness of this goodness, as we live in the asness of this one life, that all resistance, all fear, all judgment, all blocks that would hinder us from receiving any of our blessings today are released to the altar of let go and take it away. As we show up and resurface as students happy in our learning, as we allow the will of God and the Spirit love to be the center of all things today, as we meet in mind in preparation for today's good givings. So I affirm and know that as our pastors are steeped in love, steeped in truth, steeped in the deepest commitment to our highest good, that we simply open up, that we are open to receive all of the richness and the blessings of their mastery, knowing that the law works and speaks and teaches brilliantly through them. I am knowing that as we rise in our vibration, that we thrive in our being, we thrive in our doing, we thrive in our knowledge, we thrive in our love as we stand in absolute trust in the spiritual nourishment that we have already received and that we will continue to receive. I am knowing that the words given here today speak to the truth and speak to the good, and that the perfect sharing is already unfolding, and that is all there is to it. God is, God is, God is. So, Mother, Father, God, infinite spirit of giving, I thank you for yet another Sunday to gathering together in truth. I thank you for our sweet lives, God. I thank you for the vision of the pastors for CSC. I thank you for wisdom shared. I thank you for expansion in all of who and what we are. And so I release this prayer in unity and in great expectation of a spirit-filled Sunday. As I say, amen, ashe, and so it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Ashe, and so it
Shay.
is. Yes, yes.
So it is.
Did y'all feel that this morning? Feels really good. Thank you, Lavonda, for starting us off with that vibration of knowingness, that vibration spoken with confidence and expectation. So, of course, we are going to move into our teaching in just a little bit. But before we do that, we have a few announcements, some things we want to make sure that everybody is aware of. So let's just get into that. The first thing, which is incredibly important. Today is the second Sunday, which means the next Sunday is the third Sunday, and the third Sunday is God Talk Sunday. So we want you to please set aside a time so that you can be with us for the God Talk at 1 p.m. The God Talk takes place via Zoom. And so in order to get that link and password, you need to be on our mailing list. So if you're not on our mailing list, what you can actually do is text the number that you see here on the screen, text the word welcome to that number, 347-472-1078. Just the word welcome, and that'll put you on the mailing list so that you can get the link in our Friday weekly email because you want to be there for the God Talk. What is the God Talk all about? It's a private 1-hour forum that we've created to support you in asking those big questions. Sometimes things come up, particularly as we're moving through so many things right now. And the question is, how do I apply these teachings? Does metaphysics really work when we're looking at injustice? Does metaphysics really work? We're in the midst of a global pandemic. What is this? How do I apply all of this stuff to the individual circumstance and experience of my life? And we're here to support you in that. No question is off limits.
It's always an amazing unfolding. It's always a beautiful opportunity to come together and to support each other, to listen, and to be heard.
So again, that's next Sunday, 1 p.m., takes place via Zoom. You have to be on the mailing list in order to get the link so that you can join us there.
And you also have to be in the building, in the room, to get your questions answered.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't take email questions for that. It's only, you have to ask your question live. The other thing I wanted to highlight, because it's been quite a while. I think we first created and shared this resource in March when we had just begun our stay-at-home, shelter-in-place, quarantine, global pandemic, pause adventure. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that we have this resource available. Here it is in Chrome. We also just recently shared this post yesterday on Facebook, so you can find it again. But we created a whole list of sermons and sermon series that we believe will be very beneficial as we continue to move through this time. In the sermon that I shared today with Renaissance Unity in Detroit, I said, we're not at the beginning of this. I don't know if we're at the middle, and we're definitely not at the end. And so we need to make sure that we have things in place that are supporting us for the long term. So these sermons and these sermon series will do that, right? Walking Without Fear, Renew Your Mind, the Spiritual Economics Sermon Series, which will support you as you continue to study, The Infinite Way, Unconditional Living. Oh my goodness, that series is so necessary right now. And then other sermons, The Eye of the Storm, Shut Down the Reactors, and I Trained for This. Definitely, please take the time to go to that link. Again, the post is on Facebook. You can also find it on Instagram, because these sermons will support you in getting through the storm.
Yes.
Right?
And the storm is temporary.
Yes, all storms are temporary. Now, I don't know if we're in the middle.
Right.
We sure enough ain't at the end.
Right.
And so this is why we need to make sure that we have the tools and the resources in place, right? And so at this time, because so much time has gone by, that we may have forgotten that we actually had this resource here, so we want to make sure that you all know that that's available. Additionally, in addition to that, we also have the Thrive page, right? And actually what I'll do is I'll add the sermons resource to this page as well. But if you just go to celebrationsc.org/thrive, you'll see the resource links that we've been sharing all throughout our time together as we've been studying spiritual economics. There's so much good stuff here, particularly this first resource, Practice the Practice, right? If you do not have a solid, disciplined, habitual, daily spiritual practice in place, please download this resource because it will support you in doing that. There's other resources here, but I want to make sure, again, as we don't know where we are in the trajectory, where we are, what mile we're at on this marathon, it's important that we continue to remind ourselves to tap into and use the tools that we have in place. Yes, yes?
Yes, yes. And we're seeing your comments about the volume seeming to be a little low. We'll check that out as we move forward. Thank you for that.
All right, all good. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? Yes, every Wednesday, it's prayer time. And we come together, we pray every Wednesday. Prayer is led by our prayer champions. I share the reading, that day's reading of the daily word, from the daily word, and we move forward in joy and in goodness. All of the numbers are here. You should have it saved, locked into your phone. But also there's a playback number. And so if you can't catch the call at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, you can call in at any time of the day, any day. And the most recent prayer is always available. So please make use of this. This is another one of our resources for where we are in this moment in time. Additionally, if you have a prayer request, you can send an email to prayerchampions@celebrationsc.org, and we will hold and know the truth with you. Doesn't matter what it is. As you send that prayer request, visualize and see yourself releasing that, letting it go, and we will hold that and know that with you. All right, absolutely. So now it is time for meditation.
It is time for meditation. We are officially, this is our first Sunday in this month where we are actually with you for an actual live meditation. And so our theme this month is all around freedom. And the idea or the mantra is I am free. Last month we talked about softening and opening and becoming receptive to peace and ease and whatever energy we would need in our lives to move forward. And this month we're going to send that energy and that love and that peace back out into the world and energetically remind each other that we're free. First of all, that we're safe and that we're free. And from this place of knowing freedom, freedom to think and live and be our fullest expression, we grounded in the safety and the peace that we established last month. And so let us close our eyes in the knowing that I am free. No matter where my mind takes me, no matter what I see happening in the world, I'm free to choose, I'm free to be, and I'm safe in my ability to be, do, and have. So closing our eyes and finding a comfortable seat to take in freedom, to experience the freedom and the expansion in our body, and to send that energy of love out into the world, that no man, no policy can prevent us, block our freedom. Eyes are closed, body is relaxed. And from this place of a comfortable seat in our homes where we are safe, just notice the breath right here and right now. No judgment of the breath, just noticing the breath. Wherever it is in our body, we know that we are breathing in and breathing out. Whether that breath is deep or shallow, we know that we're breathing right here and right now. And now, let's take more conscious control of the movement of breath together. Breathing into the low belly now. Inhaling into the low belly. Breathe in, expand the low belly. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release the breath. Beyond where you think there's air, there is more. Let it all go. Inhale again into the low belly. Inhale. Low belly expands. Hold it there. And open the mouth and let it all go. Making room, feeling safe and secure in our breath. Let's summon the energy and move the breath a little further up. Inhale all the way up, expanding the rib cage, expanding the front and the sides and the back of the body. Hold it there. And with an audible exhale or a sigh, release the energy now. Again, inhale all the way in and up, making more room for freedom in our bodies. Hold it there. And release. We are free to breathe, free to think, free to create, breathing in all the way up through the heart now. This healing place in our bodies, in our temples. Hold it there. Expand across the chest, shoulders relax down the back, and hold. And release. Again, feeling an elongated breath in and all the way up to the place of freedom and ease and peace and safety, that heart that will remain open to goodness right here and right now. Hold it there and release. Because elongation of the breath signals safety and ease in the body, take a few rounds of a full breath in through the low belly all the way up through the heart. A few rounds on your own here, inhaling and exhaling. Each round we feel the body relax a little more. Each round we feel ourselves connected to the breath a little more. And each round we feel safe to be free. And now let's send that energy and relax the body down into the feet, feeling the energy summoned underneath the soles of the feet that are grounded and connected. Relax the feet. Energy flows as the breath flows in and out and up. Relax the ankles. Any tightness in the shins and calves, energy flowing across both. Relax the shins and the calves. Now energy flows across the knees. Relax the knees. Freedom to be right here where we are. Energy travels across the thighs and makes its way towards the hip sockets. And we relax the hips, relax the glutes, and we freely accept more joy here. Energy travels from the base of the spine all the way up the spine, opening and balancing each chakra on its ascension. Feeling energy flowing now up the spine, across the chakras, out the crown of the head, and collecting above us all, signaling and igniting our freedom, issuing a clarion call on the earth to remind us that we're free. And now that energy travels back down, opening our third eye, our awareness, our intuition, clearing a way for us to speak from freedom across our shoulders and down our arms. out our fingertips. This breath that we breathe, this energy that we feel. Imagining it finding someone on the earth and reminding them that they're free. Imagine the space that it creates for them. And what we give, we must receive. Each breath sends it out, and each breath it returns. More freedom, more power, more a sense of who we are. And as we prepare to go into our silent time, imagine this freedom, this signal, blanketing the earth, reminding those who don't remember their divinity that they're free to experience it now. Reminding those that have tried to constrict freedom that is impossible. And as we go into our silent time, I will monitor the time. You just take that journey, inhaling and exhaling, allowing more freedom, offering more freedom. And if the mind wanders, it's okay. As you become aware, bring it back. I am free. I am free. I am free. Enjoy freedom now. With our eyes still closed, we take in what we've given and now what we receive. We release any ideas that would block or hinder or constrict our freedom. We see the world moving in an easy, effortless manner. And with our eyes closed, we take a mental picture of how it feels to be free. And anytime this week that we feel a tightness, we just relax and soften and remember that we're free and that we're safe and that we're loved. Now bring a little bit more movement to the body. Maybe you rub the palms across the thighs, signaling in the body it's time to wake. Maybe you inhale and draw the shoulders up by the ears, nice and easy, and back, and nice and easy, relax them down. Maybe you wiggle the fingers and the toes, whatever feels right, whatever feels good to you. Bring the palms together at heart center, lightly touching the thumbs into the sternum, and nice and easy bowing the chin towards the fingertips. We feel an opening and freedom in the spine and the back of the neck. We notice the breath flowing across the fingertips. And nice and easy, soft gaze, flutter the eyes open. No rush here, take your time. Taking in a point on the floor in front of you. Inhale, filling up completely. Raise the gaze and raise the chin. Release with a namaste. Namaste.
Yes, yes. Namaste. Thank you, PY.
You're welcome.
Can you just give us a thumbs up in the chat? I made a quick adjustment on the microphone, so you should hear a difference for those of you that were having some trouble previously. But we're going to get into today's teaching.
Yes.
First and foremost, if you don't know already what today's teaching is and what we are studying and have been studying over these past few weeks, this is now week 12. It is Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth. If you don't have the book, please get it. If you just have the audio book, please get the book because there are pieces that are missing. In week 1, we started with the introduction and the preface. That is not in the audio book, and you need that. There's powerful stuff there. Like
Yes.
you could go in and change your whole life with just that. The other thing I want to let you know about, and let me hide this so you can see, as you're reading and as you're studying the book, we have the opportunity for questions. And so you can email us to truthsunday@celebrationsc.org. And next week, we're moving into the last chapter. So one of the things that we would love for each and every one of you to do, or for those of you that are able and interested, we know that many of you have experienced some profound shifts and changes as a result of this teaching. We know that many of you have been able to pivot in a beautiful way as a result of grounding yourself in these truths. And so we want to hear from you. Share with us your story. It doesn't have to be long, but let us know what's happening. Let us know where you were and where you are now. Because what we want to do after next week's class, we want to take some time to acknowledge that good, to acknowledge the shifts, to acknowledge the transformation. Sometimes we go through a powerful process like this, we go through a teaching like this, and we don't pinpoint and specifically talk about and celebrate the good that has taken place in our lives, and then we go back to the old position, right? And so it's important, what we focus on expands. And so, again, as we are aware of some stories, I'm sure there are many that we aren't aware of, and we want to know about it, and we want to be able to share it with the entire community. That may even mean inviting some of you to join us live on camera, bringing you in through Skype or Zoom or something, and letting you share, and we have this beautiful time together. So we really want to hear from that, hear from you. And so you want to send that to, again, truthsunday@celebrationsc.org.
It's a beautiful way to share in the healing, like I like to say, hype your healing, everybody. We get so focused on what's not right and what we didn't do right and what still needs to be, quote unquote, fixed in our thinking, that we don't hype our healing, hype the changes that we've made, hype the improvements in our thinking about ourselves and the way life unfolds for us, in the way we see things.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the way we're thinking has to result in the way that we're seeing a different world. And so please, please, please send us your comments, your thoughts. We look forward to receiving those and sharing those at the end of the month.
So we're going to be talking about tithing today, a new look at tithing. And this is beautiful and powerful. I'm sure for many of you, as you read this chapter, you were like, I've heard this a zillion times at CSC because it is so foundational. I do think we teach tithing in a radical way and in a different way. Even as we teach the 4 T's program, we actually shift the way tithing is dealt with in the 4 T's prosperity program. And so at the outset, I encourage you to check out, look for the YouTube playlist on our YouTube channel, the Law of Circulation series. Because the Law of Circulation series really deals with the very same things in this chapter and maybe expands on it even more. Sermons like Source or Resource, Stop Tithing, Start Giving. And of course, it'll work if you work it. So let's just dig into what Eric Butterworth is writing here, and we'll talk about it because there's so many powerful things.
Talk about an opportunity to heal. I know many of us have had some old ideas about tithing that are outdated, outmoded, and no longer necessary for us.
Right.
So.
And you know, it's old, but in truth, and as this chapter really outlines, it's just not accurate, right? I mean, it wasn't how tithing is supposed to be thought about. So we start in the beginning. A study of the subject of prosperity invariably includes the practice of tithing. This is true. In most cases, it is taught with the dogmatism that is unparalleled in the whole study of truth. Tithers swear by the practice and speak glowingly of the benefits, feeling the pinch of grow the benefits that have come to them. However, many persons feeling the pinch of economic stringency have great reservations about it. Makes sense.
Rightfully so.
Right? Now, the tithing idea is often given mystical roots dating biblically to the book of Genesis, where Abraham gave a tithe of all he had to Melchizedek, king of Salem, who had blessed him. Today, there are whole religious denominations that require tithing of all their adherents. Many other religious groups suggest it as a helpful discipline. Building on the foundation belief that tithing is God's law, many highly persuasive arguments are set forth. At the very outset, let us establish the point that tithing is an excellent practice that we strongly recommend to anyone who is seeking to change her or his life from indigence to affluence. And in this chapter, we want to probe deeply into the practice beyond the superficial, illogical, and materialistic way it is normally approached. Tithing is normally encouraged for all the wrong reasons. Some of the claims made and arguments set forth make the tithing concept a gross materialization of a beautiful spiritual law. Okay. So we have some questions. Is the practice of tithing a fundamental in this new insight and truth? Is it biblical? Was it part of Jesus' teaching? Where are the origins, and how has it evolved to contemporary times? So one of the pieces here, and I'm not going to dig into each piece of it because I think it's easier just to talk about it. We must understand something that's going on. When we read Scripture, when we look at the First Testament, otherwise called the Old Testament, we have to understand the Levitical law and what was going on, and understanding that the people in those kingdoms, the unified kingdom of Israel at one point, and later the divided kingdoms of Israel and Judah, were living under a theocracy. And so what that means is that the tithe was really like we pay taxes. Right? That's really what it was. But because it was a theocracy, and so religion was embedded into everything they did, said, into the culture, as well as the government, that tithe was paid to the priests, because the priests worked in the spiritual part of the government at least. And so as they couldn't work, they still needed oxen and things, just like everybody else. Right? And so that's what the tithe really was. It's so incredibly important. So I have this highlighted here. It wasn't a love offering or a charitable contribution at all. So there's the first, just number one thing that we have to think about when we're talking about tithing and we want to understand what tithing is or is not. If we are saying that we're tithing because the Bible says we should, or we're tithing like the Bible says we should, that absolutely cannot be true. Because when we give on Sundays, when we give to an organization that we believe in or we want to support, it's a love offering or a charitable contribution. Your taxes are neither a love offering nor a charitable contribution, right? And so that's incredibly important. I think then we can also then start to understand sort of why the teeth were in that that wonderful passage of Scripture where we read in Malachi, and there's sort of that fearful part of will a man rob God, right? In the same way that many people fear the IRS, right? Like we have this kind of relationship. It's similar in that way. That's why that language was written, and why the prophet is speaking in that way, right? Many of us today, we would say, don't mess with the IRS, don't play with your taxes, right? So we're in a similar boat here, right?
And that's important context, right? And I'm so glad that we get an opportunity to share that. We usually don't get to go into that every Sunday.
Right.
It's important to put it in context of when and what was happening in the time that those words were written and what they were really relating to. It had nothing to do with your goodness or your being saved, right? Or your heavenly reward. Had nothing to do with that. It was just like they were paying taxes like we pay for the school system.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's important to understand.
Yep. And I see that comment. That's actually powerful, right? If we think about it, if you're not in alignment with the current government, the current administration, right, you pay your taxes out of duty, not out of love,
right?
Right? Or not out of charity, right? And of course, in some cases, people would love to withhold them, but there's a greater thing going on, right?
You understand the importance of paying your taxes.
Right.
You know what it contributes to. You see the benefit of it in the world.
Absolutely. So again, I think without just going into every line of this part, understanding that we're talking about a theocracy, understanding that as he talks about here in early Israel, right, under the leadership of Moses, there were 12 tribes, which would be like 12 states, or 12 colonies, if you will. And so again, under the theocracy, the government is managed by the priests. Thus, the Levites became the bureaucracy, and the system by which they were supported was the tithe. There was nothing voluntary about it. Hear that again. There was nothing voluntary about it. The Mosaic Code was rigidly enforced, and in some cases, infractions were punishable by death. This is the biblical source from which our contemporary practice of tithing has derived. So again, the giving that we do, regardless of your spiritual persuasion, regardless of your theology, whether you're New Thought, whether you're Protestant, Methodist, right? What you are practicing in terms of your giving on Sundays is not this thing that was in the Bible. Okay? We go on. I'm just moving to the highlight. Keep in mind, it was a tithe tax, which probably originated as a tribute laid down by a shrewd conqueror or ruler of his subjects. It may be assumed that the custom of dedicating a tenth of the spoils of war to the gods in time gave rise to a religious extension of the phrase, giving the tenth to God. It is highly likely that when Abraham gave a tithe of his flocks to Melchizedek, the king of Salem, he was actually paying a tribute to the ruler for safe passage through his land. Very important.
Oh, this is mind-blowing, right?
Right?
And freeing. So that we're no longer giving from out of fear.
Right.
We're doing it out of love.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right. And so your church, your place of worship, your source of spiritual nourishment is not the IRS and should not be treated like the IRS, right? It's not a tax, right? And we know that. Not understanding all of this, or possibly not wanting to see it, religious teachers and writers wanting to cite authorities for the contemporary tithing practice have pointed to all the many instances in the Old Testament where tithe is referred to. The argument that is usually used is if a tenth was required under the law in those olden times, it is certainly no less fitting that we should give it cheerfully now. Now, without judging the merits of tithing, isn't this line of reasoning somewhat illogical? Can we get a yes, yes?
Yes, yes. Now that we know what it was originally for, doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Under their law, the Israelites were bound to many restrictive observances. There are references to people actually being stoned to death for nothing more than gathering wheat on Sabbath day, for this was a clear infraction of the fourth commandment. But we do not put people to death in modern times for playing golf on Sunday. Ah, but times have changed, we say. But why should the rigidity of tithing observance remain unchanged, even if it was a giving process in biblical times, which it was not? Jesus seemed to make a career out of upgrading the laws and observances of the Old Testament in the light and needs of contemporary times. For instance, with many of the commandments, he said, in essence, you have heard it said of old, but I say unto you, ... Then he gave a practical insight for living. He was no rebel intent on breaking down the rule of ecclesiastical law. He was a Jew, reared in the traditions of the synagogue. And he said, I have come not to abolish them, the laws, but to fulfill them. Okay?
But you got to understand what they are first, how they impact you to fulfill them.
Exactly. So if you are interested, he goes again, carefully examine the 10 Commandments. They would appear to be a series of restrictive laws outlining lines of conduct by which the Israelites must live. However, and this is an important teaching and understanding sort of why the 10 Commandments exist and why most rules or laws exist. However, wise students of practical religion will break them down to their underlying essence where they can see them as a supportive framework for the spiritually mature. Infants may need playpens, and children may need fences to keep them from straying into danger. But as people mature, there must come a time when they put away childish things. For instance, a sign of maturity in teenagers is when they decide to come home at a reasonable hour because they need the rest for school the following day, not just because their parents say so and will take away their allowance if they disobey. So it is with tithing. Take a breath. Now we're talking about spiritual maturity. Right? Unfortunately, what a lot of teachings have done around tithing is made an assumption around the spiritual immaturity of most people. They won't give faithfully. They won't give regularly. They won't give wholeheartedly unless we tie it to some type of penalty.
Or the fear, right. Tie it to fear.
Right. And so there comes a time when, if we understand the law, and this chapter directly relates back to the chapter on giving. Throughout this chapter, he brings us back to that idea of think, give, think, give, think, give. When we start to understand what giving is, when we start to understand what circulation is, this is why I always love using the breath as the example. None of us ever think, I'm not going to exhale. I'm not giving all of this that's in me, right? and also we don't think, well, if I inhale, is there going to be enough for everybody else, right? We live in that cycle of circulation without even thinking about it. And that is, as above, so below, as within, so without. It is the same truth of all giving. Breath is just one way that we give and receive. And so the spiritually mature, like the example of the teenager, understand, yeah, I could stay out all night, right, and do something crazy, but I realize I need sleep because I got a test and I have goals and I have things that I'm trying to do. So that's why I come home, not because I'm in fear of getting in trouble, right?
And it makes for a much more pleasant experience to know that I'm giving and receive, that there's this cycle of breath and cycle of life and cycle of goodness that just continually flows. Especially in our time now where we're so focused on when we can't breathe, what that feels like, how constricted it feels, how afraid we are when our breath is taken. And this is telling us that there's this flow happening always. And I'm going to be in the cycle of that. Not in fear that I can't, or that I won't, or that it's restricted, or that if I breathe, someone else can't. So powerful.
Very powerful. So we go on. If we can accept the early practice as a form of mandatory contribution, then as with the commandments, it was intended as a trellis by which we might be strengthened in our early period of spiritual growth. But the time must come when we let go of the rigid obligation so that we can spontaneously give in love and freedom and have the satisfaction that our giving equals or exceeds the tithe. Right, so this is one of the reasons why we teach the 4 T's class in the way that we do. We make a 12-week commitment to give a specific amount each week, right? And even with that, we do not say it must be a 10th of your gross or net income. It must simply be an amount that you commit to to give weekly, because we recognize that building the muscle of a weekly commitment or bi-weekly commitment or monthly commitment, whatever that looks like based on how you receive income, that helps you to build up to this place where then eventually, as he says, then when we spontaneously give in love and freedom and we have the satisfaction that our giving equals or even exceeds the tithe. That's the only reason that component exists in the class, and it's only for 12 weeks, right? And the giving is not just of your money, right? It's of your time, talent, and treasure, because the scripture says give of your whole tithe.
Yes.
Right? And that's what it's talking about when we consider that from this perspective of understanding what would the whole giving of our whole look like in this day and time, right? It would be of our time, talent, and treasure. Time to self, right? Right? Talents as service, right? Treasure as a symbol and a mechanism of I'm giving from a well that won't run dry. And as I give, I receive. I'm giving from the source, not a resource.
Absolutely. And if you think about give the whole tithe, a lot of people can put their money on the table, but they don't put their heart and their talents forward. Even if it's at church or wherever it is, I'll give you this,
Right.
but I'm not going to give of myself. I'm not going to even show up as my full self.
Right.
Give of the whole.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And how can you put a value, a number value on the whole?
Right. This takes us back to, we talked about Khalil Gibran weeks ago, right? Work is love made visible, right? That's giving, right? I give of my love. I mean, that's why we sing it. We haven't sung it in months now, right? I give my love. More love comes rushing back to me. So we skip forward, and here he's talking about in the highlight, actually, Jesus is never quoted in support of tithing. Very interesting. The reason is obvious. He makes only 2 references to the practice. And in both instances, tithing is referred to as a practice of someone who is being criticized, right? And so these 2 examples, in one of his tirades against the Pharisees, Jesus said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel." This is certainly not a recommendation of tithing. In his parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee stood and prayed, "God, I thank thee that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all I get." Then Jesus said that the tax collector would be justified, not the Pharisee. Again, no tribute to the tithing practice. This is not to infer that Jesus condemned the practice of tithing, but it is to realize that he saw the keeping of the rigid code of tithing as a ritual far less important than the weightier matters of consciousness. And since he did make reference to the subject, certainly if he had felt that tithing was a must in his highway of spiritual unfoldment, he would have stated a clear position, but he didn't do so. It is important to note that Jesus was very specific in his teaching of the law of giving. Note that we are drawing a definite distinction between the practice of tithing and the spontaneous process of giving. Give, and it shall be given unto you.
Yes.
Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meet withal, it shall be measured to you. For those of you who watch the Money is God in Action class that we shared over Memorial Day weekend, I break down a little bit more of what that's about, right? And why that even mattered in that time, because it sounds good, but it doesn't relate sort of to how the world works now. But if you understand that they gave and received things in baskets when you went to the market, right? And you got spices, or you got vegetables, or you got fruit, or wheat, or whatever it may be. What you wanted that person to do is to take the basket, press it down.
Yes.
Oh, excuse me, put more in, shake it up, press it down, right? Until you got so much that the basket was running over. And so that's what that's about. If you could imagine a basket that is filled to the brim, and it's been filled so well, again, pushing it down, putting more in, pushing it down, putting more in, shaking it to make sure every little corner, every little area is filled till the point that it's overflowing, right? That's what this is about. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over.
Can you imagine? That's beautiful imagery to think about your life. That's the way it's been given to you. Of your gifts, your skills, your talents. And your basket should be overflowing. And we're giving from the overflow.
Yes, yes. The Old Testament dealt with the law of giving, which is fundamentally supportive on the basis of the practice of tithing, which was completely coercive. Tithing was something the Israelites were required to do. Jesus taught the law of consciousness, that one always has a choice.
Yes.
Though one must live with the effects of his or her choice, you receive as you give. And if you would receive more, you can give more, but you have complete freedom.
Freedom is the theme today.
Right? This is very important. Right? In the Old Testament times, tithing was an enforced discipline laid down for people who did not have the spiritual development to work with divine law. It took its place alongside hundreds of laws and observances governing everything from sanitation to meditation. As training wheels on a bicycle help a youngster to learn to ride unaided, so all these laws were right and appropriate for the people of that day. This is not to say that we may not be benefited by training wheels in many aspects of our sociological and spiritual development. Certainly, the practice of tithing is an excellent training process. One may read dozens of testimonials of persons who have gotten themselves on the road to a giving consciousness and who have demonstrated success and prosperity through the disciplined practice of tithing. But we must understand why they receive the results. It's not, and we've shared this before, it's not the magic of 10%. He shares this story with William Colgate, how he starts at 10% and expands, and he continued to make more money. I've shared it many times. Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, they give, I believe it's like 90% now of what they give out of what they receive. And they can't help but remain billionaires, right? Their income and their wealth keeps increasing. But when we think about it logically, and I love how Eric Butterworth is appealing to our logic here, it would almost suggest that, oh, well, if I want to be a billionaire, then I should give 90% of my income. It's not about that. It's the consciousness behind it.
Yes.
And they've moved in stages and recognized the power and the possibility of giving. And as they have continued to easily and effortlessly move through those stages, they continue to experience the blessing of giving, not of tithing. We just read it, right? What is it, right? Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together. What that's also saying to you, growing up in the church, we heard many times, I know you did, you can't beat God-given, no matter how you try, right? And that's what that's about, that when you give, what you receive is always multiplied, right? It's way more than what you gave. Give with your whole heart, give freely, give willingly, give joyfully, give cheerfully, right? And you receive multiplied, right? Inevitably, that's just how it works.
And right, in the beginning, the training wheels work and have worked to establish a habit. But not only do we need to take the training wheels off, the church needs to take the training wheels off. And it needs to move into a consciousness of these laws and principles and how they really work and demonstrate it, not through criticizing and not through putting your name up on the board if you didn't give a certain amount. The church has to evolve its consciousness around these ideas as well. And that's why we try to demonstrate that in the way that we talk about tithing. Because it's important. It frees us all up to give from our overflow, not feel constricted, not feel pressured, not feel guilty if you can't give. Not give your last. Right? That's important.
Yep. And so again, he shares this story of Colgate, which we don't have to read, but it's that underlying idea. He started with a tenth and grew from there. So I go to the highlight here. It is unfortunate, however, and also misleading that tithing is presented as a divine law rather than a training discipline by which to work toward the knowledge of the law of giving.
Yes.
See, giving and receiving is the law. Circulation is the law, not tithing. Oh my God, if you don't hear anything else today, right? If you really get that, tithing is not a law. Tithing is making use of the law of giving and receiving. It's just one way.
It's one way.
It's just one way. That's all. But no matter which way you use, which tool you use, you must understand the law of giving and receiving, the law of circulation, which is always at work all the time, whether you're aware of it or not.
Right. And doesn't that feel better? Doesn't that feel better about what you decide to give on any given Sunday? Doesn't that feel better if you set up a process of giving that you're not giving out of guilt? Doesn't that feel better? Don't you feel freer in your ability to make the choice to give to an organization that spiritually feeds you?
These next sentences are so important. Sometimes it is said that tithing is a magic cure for all ills, but there is no magic whatever in tithing. If prosperity or healing results from tithing, it has come through the fulfilling of the law: as you give, so you receive. Now this is important. And weeks ago we kind of were touching on magic, and PY and I we try to stay away from that word, right? Because magical thinking, but it's important here that we don't think of this as magic, because if we use words without thinking. Magic in and of itself is the art of illusion. That's what magic is. Magic is awesome, it's cool, but it's illusion. Like, that's how magic works, right? So we wouldn't want to gravitate to anything that we think is magic, because if we think it's magic or magical, what we're really working with is the art of illusion.
Right.
It ain't real.
It's not real.
Right.
And so the conditions change, and then the conditions by which the magic has to operate has to change.
Right.
And you're just out here in the world living from this illusion of what you think this thing is doing.
Setting up new tricks.
Right.
That's all you're doing, setting up new tricks. But this is not magic. This is law.
Right.
That's the difference. Bicycle riding is based on the law of balance, working with the law of inertia. The training wheels have nothing to do with the laws by which the bicycle is propelled. They simply help the rider experience the working of the law. So why do we insist on this distinction? Tithing is not an end, but a helpful means towards the end of living totally in a giving consciousness. Too often, institutions sell the tithing practice as a way of achieving sustained support. And so again, this is why I say we don't sell tithing. When we teach the prosperity class, it's a component. But I think what's most important about that, again, the tithing of time, talent, and treasure, the tithing of time is to yourself.
Yes. And it's the first component.
It's the first component, right? So even when we're talking about giving and receiving, right, if you are not giving to self, you are not fully operating in the law of circulation beneficially, right? Because you would have to have something in order to give, right?
And it makes you so conscious of all that you have.
Right.
And so excited about all that you are and all that you have that you cannot help but give it away.
Right? What does A Course in Miracles say? Giving is proof of having.
Yes.
Right? Giving is proof of having. Right? I can't give if I don't have. So as I give, I'm proving that I'm aware that I have.
I have time for myself.
Lord
I
have
have
mercy.
time to give my gifts and my resources. I have. Not I'm giving to get.
Right.
Because that's what we've been teaching ourselves with this
There it
magic
is.
formula is
There it
giving to
is.
get.
There it is.
If I give 10%, then I got to get 50%
Right,
back, right?
right.
We're not operating that way. We don't give to get. That's manipulation. That's manipulation.
Yeah.
And it's been taught on a grand scale. And the only reason it works is because we believe that that formula works.
Right.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move forward.
Yes.
Let's move forward.
Yes, we can get there, stay there for a while.
Now, an effective religious organization is certainly worthy of support, but fundamental to this effectiveness is helping people to understand the full scope of the law of giving. Totally overlooked is the teaching responsibility to lead the person to an understanding of the process of giving way to the divine flow. Little wonder that some people refer to tithing as the commercial of the church, a tragic derogation of a beautiful idea.
Now, how many of us do we kind of turn off when we get to the offering part? Because of this idea that we've been all operating under. We're kind of like, oh, Lord, I knew they was going to ask me for money, right? As opposed to, oh, it's time for me to practice the process of giving way, of giving, of being in the circle of giving and receiving. Completely different, a reframe of this whole conversation about giving to the church. And a new opportunity for the church, as I said before, to understand it itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Books on the subject of tithing are often adorned with dollar signs, suggesting that tithing is an infallible way to get rich. Again, a sickening materialization of a beautiful truth. To tithe as a kind of good investment, expecting to get back more than one gives, is not truly giving. PY just said that, didn't she? It is a kind of bartering, a selfish attempt to work the law instead of letting the law work you. This materialistic approach to tithing is widespread, and ours may well be a voice crying in the wilderness, right? We ask only that the tither or the person weighing the merits of the practice think the matter through carefully. If people get into the tithe your way to riches and success consciousness, they are building their houses on sand.
And really an illusion.
Right? With dollar signs in their eyes, they are more concerned with what they are giving than to what they are giving from. This need not be the case. It is a question of motivation. One needs to face up to some hard questions. Do I tithe to get things or get an awareness of the divine law? Do I analyze the effectiveness of my tithing on the basis of my income or my general well-being? Let's pause.
Yeah, those are important questions.
Do I tithe or do I give? Do I analyze the effectiveness of my giving or tithing on the basis of my income or my general well-being?
I feel like we're pulling the curtain back on some stuff today. Am I the only one feeling that?
That's powerful.
Because then you can ask these questions, answer them for yourself, and let your giving reflect your answer.
And this is, again, we said the whole tithe. We said whole self, wholeheartedly, right? Because your tithing, even if it's financial, your tithing should then, the benefits, the receiving, should show up as your general well-being, right? If I give $1,000 today, I'm not looking at my life to say, okay, where did that 1,000 turn into 2,000, 3, 4, 5,000, right? I'm also looking at, do I have peace of mind? Right? When I wake up in the morning,
relationships?
Right? Right? Do I wake up in joy? Right? Do I receive kindness out in the world? Right? I've said this many times. Sometimes the thing that you need to receive and that you receive, sometimes you get pushed to the front of the line. You're at the grocery store and somebody just says, "Oh, you can go in front of me. I got all the time in the world."
Yeah.
Right. That's literally part of your general well-being. That's part of your receiving.
And if your focus is only on the dollars, then you miss all this opportunity that you're receiving. You miss the opportunity to say yes to things. If all you're focusing on is what's in my bank account, then you miss the whole thing.
The whole thing.
You miss the whole you. You miss the whole ability to experience that giving from someone else.
Yeah. And so there's an opportunity, even right now, those of you that feel a desire to do this, right, to just spend this week of making that type of assessment of your general well-being. I forget how Pam Grout talks about it in Think and Grow Rich. There's a formula or a term she uses because she always has cool terms. But essentially, looking at your entire life, each section of your life, realizing that, okay, I'm giving in love. I'm giving and serving in love at work. I'm giving and serving in love through my finances to my church home, to the place where I'm spiritually fed, to organizations that I believe in. I'm giving to my nieces and nephews, whatever it may be, right? All of these things, you're aware of how you're giving and where you're giving, and you believe that you're giving from a whole heart. You believe that you're giving cheerfully, willingly, lovingly, giving in joy because you love to give. Well, and we'll start to then analyze your general well-being, because that's then when you will see the pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It's a powerful practice. You can just use this week just to do that type of analysis. And
to be honest with yourself, if you're giving to get. I know I've done it.
All of us have.
And it's not just financial giving you get, right? If we think about relationships, sometimes we give in relationships to get something, to get them to stay, to get them to do what you want, right? So are we giving to get in our lives?
Right.
And be honest about it. No judgment, no heat.
Right.
Just honesty.
Right. What's the real reason you're staying late at work?
Right. What's the real reason you're giving so much of your time at work? Is it fear that they're going to let you go? Is it fear that this job means that I mean this job title means this about me, so I got to hold on to it? So this practice of giving that we're talking about opens up so many areas of our lives where we need to let's take a little closer look.
Right. So many.
So many areas.
So many.
Maybe not all at one time, because that might be overwhelming.
Right.
But it's a beautiful way to realize that, oh, this practice of giving is more than just my financial resources.
Absolutely.
I'm learning how to live in the flow.
Yep.
I'm learning how to live from the have.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm learning when I do this.
Absolutely.
And that's why we get excited.
Absolutely.
Because it takes it to another dimension. It takes it to its rightful place. It's how we practice consciousness.
Hey, all right. Not just talk about it.
Not just talk about it. Not just put our money on the table.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I didn't know we was going there today.
So we go on. Let us not be misunderstood on this point. Giving is a fundamental spiritual law. You cannot live without giving, as you cannot live without breathing. You inhale and you exhale on and on constantly. It is part of the vital process of life. But there is no rule that says you must inhale so many cubic inches of air. It depends on your lung capacity, on the requirements in terms of your level of exertion. Now, it may be that a person is not breathing correctly, so a specialist may give the person some breathing exercises, which can be helpful in restoring balance. In the same sense, tithing can be an excellent program to help you become established in the giving-receiving rhythm. That's what it does.
It's a way to practice, y'all. It's not a way to feel guilty.
Right. The principle is, as we stressed in the previous chapter, in any complications you may experience in life, the most effective road to overcoming is through giving. However, tithing is not necessarily the way to a giving consciousness. That's powerful. It is possible that you may neglect the consciousness of giving while you are enthralled in the magic of tithing.
The magic of tithing equals giving to get.
Right, right. And it's unfortunate. You know, I look forward to when we're able to teach 4Ts again and teach our prosperity class again. But it's unfortunate because I see many people sometimes come into the class with that idea. You want your life to change, and your belief is that this magical process is what will change your life.
As opposed to your consciousness changing.
Right. We start that in week 1.
Yes.
The point of the 4T prosperity program is a what? A changed consciousness.
And not just about money.
Right.
But about every area
Right.
of your life, your well-being.
Right.
A shift in consciousness around your well-being.
Right. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not about money. It's about changing your consciousness.
And when you change your consciousness, everything changes. And that's why it happens so quickly. And that's why it feels magical. That's why.
Yeah.
It's not because it is magical. It's
Right.
because something automatically, the moment you shift your perception of life, the things that you look at in the world have to change.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's just the way, that's law.
That's just law. That's just law. And so he shares an example of a woman who was trying to operate in the magic of tithing, right? But as he began to, and things weren't working out, right? She was still having trouble at work. But he writes that she tithes, but she does not give. She needs to begin to think give, to become service-oriented, to go the extra mile, to be more creative in her work. Tithing can be a way of getting into a giving consciousness, but it is not a substitute for a giving attitude.
And many people are like, well, I'm giving everything. But it's the consciousness under which you are giving. So that's why you got to go back and look, why am I giving? If I'm giving out of fear, then I constrict my flow.
You know, and it really can't be said enough. PY talked about it in personal relationships. You know, we can talk about romantic relationships, but as parents, we do that, right? I mean, any relationship, you can start to think about it. At work, there are ways that we do that. Again, as parents, sometimes we do those things, right? We do that with other family members. And so it's so important that we get into this giving attitude. The great need is to give way to the divine flow, and tithing can be an excellent means of achieving the giving consciousness. However, the giving must involve something more than the writing of a tithe check. Malachi refers to the whole tithe. This means all of us, and not just all of our money. When Jesus criticized the Pharisees for tithing without love, he could have been implying that they tithed decimally and not spiritually. The whole tithe would appear to be exemplified in the incident where Peter and John were accosted by a crippled beggar at the temple. Peter said to the man, I have no silver and gold, but I give you what I have in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Walk.
I give you the consciousness to know that you are whole, perfect, and complete. So get up. And that's worth more than I could just drop off in your little basket in front of you.
Hey.
Because if I put the money in that basket, I'm reinforcing your belief that you are not whole. I'm going to give you some consciousness. I'm going to elevate you to know that you are connected to a stream of well-being. I'm going to elevate your consciousness to know that you are perfect, whole, and complete, and that as you change your mind, your life has to change. And I'm not going to give you change in the form of coins. I'm going to give you change in the form of consciousness.
Yes. Out of this complete giving consciousness, the man was healed. And he takes us back to Khalil Gibran. If you go to our resource, the Thrive resource, the link to the full poem is there. But he writes, you give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. Give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse could imply a commitment to work with the law in all aspects of life.
Yes.
Prove me now, God is saying, prove the law in action.
Yes.
This involves going the second mile in meeting obligations, turning the other cheek in relationships, and forgiving until 70 times 7. It means diligence in keeping the high watch of positive thinking and loving reactions in overcoming the world of tribulations. In other words, life is consciousness. So it is foolhardy to suppose that the law can be fulfilled by anything less than a total and broad commitment to achieving a high-level consciousness. Now, that total and broad commitment, it doesn't mean that you get it right every day.
Nope.
It doesn't mean that some days you want to cuss folk out.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that some days you feel a sense of emptiness and you try to fill it through giving, right? It doesn't mean any of that doesn't happen. But, and this is why we bring ourselves to this daily, right? So that we have something to pull us back when we get out there in the foolishness, right? That's all.
Right. Doesn't mean we don't want to punch throats, as I say, right? Doesn't mean that we don't want to, right? It just means that I'm starting to learn to open my fist, open my hand, open my heart.
And also, this becomes your goal, right? Because the other thing, without a vision, the people perish. And we look in that translation, the people cast off restraint, meaning there's nothing guiding you forward, right? There's nothing that pulls you back when you might fall off, right? A restraint, if I was restrained back to the back of this couch, I could try to move forward, but the restraint is what's going to pull me back. That's what we need. And so as you are all here right now, as you are all our light workers and truth seekers and master metaphysicians, you have something in place in your life that's going to pull you back. You can't get too far off, right? You can't get too far off. So please, when you hear this and when you read this, please don't think that it's like, oh, I got to have it all perfect.
I got to have it all together.
High levels of positive thinking and loving
All the
reactions.
time.
And I got to forgive everybody and turn the other cheek. No, some days you ain't going to turn the other cheek.
Right. Let's just be honest.
Right. That's okay, right? You're going to come back to it. You make a mistake.
Right. Your ability to turn the other cheek doesn't change the consciousness, the law of consciousness that created it all. Right? The love that this God is, that this unconditional love is big enough to hold every emotion, every experience, every time that you don't do, quote unquote, what you know you should do. That's how expansive love is.
Exactly.
And unconditional it is. It doesn't change its mind about you, even if you've changed your mind about you.
Yeah. That's love and grace. That's love and
Yes.
grace. Well, grace is an extension of love. That's what it is, right? Jesus gave prime emphasis on giving as the way to achieve this degree of consciousness. Give and you will receive. Get the feeling of being a channel for the flow of good. Think give and you will receive. Think of your work as giving. Think of every relationship as an opportunity to give. Give to your children. Give to your neighbors. Give to passersby on the street. Think give. Give way. Let. Allow.
Yes, give way. Open up. And allow this cycle to continue to manifest itself in you and as your life. Let.
Yes. And as part of this commitment to the giving consciousness, give of your substance graciously, wisely, and without thought of return. Think not of what you are giving to, for that can turn the mind to condescension or giving to be seen of men. Rather, think of what you are giving from, and thus feel humble in realizing that you are simply giving way to the divine flow. Certainly a helpful and practical plan for getting order and system in your giving commitment is the way of tithing. It makes as much sense as keeping a budget. and it can be given an appropriate recognition in the budget. However, it is wise to remind yourself that the 10% is simply a disciplined reminder to bring the whole tithe. The giving consciousness must continue where the check leaves off.
Yes.
And again, a tenth is not the magical number. Whatever that commitment is, whatever that amount is, right? You set it, you're making a commitment to that. Beautiful, wonderful.
Right.
But it must continue. The giving consciousness must continue where that check leaves off.
Absolutely. Set it, forget it, and let it.
Yes.
That's the new motto. Set it, forget it, and let it. Let the flow happen. Let your consciousness expand. Let your relationships grow. Set it, if you're going to put an amount in, forget it, and let it.
Yes, yes. If one is sincere in the desire to grow and ultimately put away childish things, a good plan is to use the Tithing Slide-Rule as a means of checking up on your spontaneous giving during this year. In other words, instead of following the regular ritual of writing a tithe check, work for a commitment to give way to the divine flow on a sustained basis. This is interesting, right? So this is another tool you can do, and you might want to do this, look at it over several months, right? Because it'll really tap you into if you've really developed a giving consciousness. Because sometimes I know I'm surprised, for instance, we get our statements from CSC at the beginning of the year for taxes, and I'm generally surprised at how much I gave, right? I give a specific amount, and then I also give more as I receive more, because it's just the way it works. And I'm still like dumbfounded, like, wait, wow, I gave that much, and looking at all of my other contributions. So I think it's interesting. It can show you that put you in a wow place, right? But also it could demonstrate to you that you thought you were giving, and maybe you weren't, right? That really you actually have been giving from a sense of a deficit, or giving from a sense of sacrifice, or giving to get. And this will clear this up for you. And then you could start to then, okay, I want to be very disciplined about it. Okay, I'm going to set a specific amount so that I can build this muscle back up again. I am going to identify specific ways that I can go the extra mile and make love visible in whatever my chosen work is. I'm going to identify how I'm giving from this giving consciousness to my parents, or to my children, or to my siblings, right?
Or to myself.
Oh, yes, absolutely, right? Right? To myself, to my community.
Yes.
Right? I think this is very, very, very important. It's a wonderful thing. So he kind of breaks that down here in the section of just as something that we can start to do. Because ultimately the idea is to take the training wheels off, right? We need to have training wheels. We need to have something that supports us in having this balanced perspective, right? That supports us in developing this muscle of living and giving and receiving. And thank you, PY, because it really can't be expressed enough, that giving to self, right? The golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Give unto others as you would have them give unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? And I love that, as yourself. You can't love your neighbor if you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
You can't give to anyone if you're not giving, to self. Right? Incredibly important.
Because then you're operating from a deficit. I don't have. I can't even recognize what I am and how powerful I am and what I offer, and love myself for what I offer. Instead, I'm going to look out there and see what they can give me, what they can prove to me about myself. Let me take ownership of the choices and the decisions and the things I believe about me. Absolutely. Let me not rely on what others think.
Yep.
Let me know who and what I am first, and give from that place, and see what happens.
And so he sums this up beautifully in this sentence. On human levels of consciousness, one may emphasize getting and having as prime goals. In spiritual consciousness, one seeks the way of giving and being.
The big B. I love the being.
Giving and being. Right? Because when you're now giving from your beingness, and this is also it's that understanding of giving is proof of having, right? You got to know what you have, and in that sense, in consciousness, that I have the all that is, right? I have this source that never changes, and that never exhausts itself, right? So it gives unyieldingly, right? Unflinchingly, unconditionally. And my beingness is rooted and grounded in that,
Yes.
right? You know where you live, right? You know where you're from. You know what your spiritual address is,
Yes, your spiritual address.
right? That's your beingness. And so from that place of awareness, oh my goodness, of course I give, right? Of course I give. I give, I keep quoting here from in the prayer in 4 T's, right? I give in love because I love to give, right? I give willingly, cheerfully, joyfully.
I give as love.
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
give as love because I love to give.
Yes, yes. Right? And so the crux of the statement in Malachi is, I will open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing. This is usually quoted to indicate that if you tithe, everything in heaven and earth will fall in your lap. But how conveniently, in this instance, it is forgotten that heaven is not up there or out there.
Say it.
Jesus clearly says that the kingdom of heaven is within you. It is not a place in space, but an inner potentiality of imprisoned splendor that is released through you.
Yes.
Thus, the windows of heaven are in you. The windows of heaven are you. You are the windows of heaven, and you will be poured out as a blessing. You will be poured out as a blessing.
You are the blessing.
Blessed to be a blessing. And because you are in the flow of limitless substance by reason of your commitment to the whole tithe, the blessing that you become is more than sufficient to deal with any situation and meet any and all requirements. See, there's an old song that the saints used to sing in church when I was growing up. So when I hear you are the windows of heaven, and that line just started, the windows of heaven are open. Right? The fire has fallen tonight. I've got joy in my heart, right? And so this underlying idea, right? It was a song of joy. When somebody got that thing going, the service got real good, right? But so when I read this, thus the windows of heaven are in you. The windows of heaven are you. So no longer do we have to sing about some windows of heaven that are opening, but the windows of heaven are open in me, through me, as me, because I am the windows of heaven. And so when I'm living in this consciousness of giving and being, you are experiencing heaven when you experience me. When I'm living in this consciousness of giving and being, your children are experiencing heaven when they experience you. When you are living in the consciousness of giving and being, your workplace, your community, your neighborhood, the subway, the bus, the airplane that you sit on is experiencing heaven in, through, and as you.
And how many times have you met someone that just makes you feel elevated? That just makes you feel loved and alive? They are being heaven. And you just want to be around them. You don't know what it is about them. The way they look at you.
Hey.
They're being heaven.
Yeah. I'm remembering, and we're not going to go any further with this chapter. There's so much. But I remember Reverend Ike told a story about being on the plane once. He was with one of his other ministers, and they were just having a good time. They were enjoying and just laughing, and it was just good, right? He was living in this idea, and there were some other people on the plane that were just like, well, who are these gentlemen? Because their joy was just so infectious. Their joy was something that they wanted to be around, and it turned out that man that asked was the late great Merv Griffin, right? Who just wanted to know, like, well, I want some of what you got, right? I'm over here. I'm successful in my life. I've created all these game shows and done all of these wonderful things in my life, and people know and love me. But I want some of what you got. This is what it was about. They're living in this consciousness. And when you're living in that consciousness,
you have no qualms about giving. You don't even think twice. And nobody has to put your name on a board to make you give, right?
Yes.
I always dislike that practice.
Yeah.
Nobody has to do that.
Nobody has to do it.
When you're giving and being.
That's true. It's true. So in this moment, it is
everybody
time
take a breath.
for giving.
This is good. This has been so good.
It is time for giving. And so all of this undergirds why we say what we say every week, right? Give what feels good.
Yes.
Right? Give from your joy and let your joy show you what your joy number is, and give that number easily and effortlessly.
Not just let the words that I speak say anything about me. Let my joy speak for me.
Right. And so we start with, what do I have? Right? I know what I have. And so from that place of having, I'm giving. right? Not our place of onlyness. Oh, I only have X number, right? What do I have? I have $5. I give X number, right? I have $1,000. I give X number. What feels good? That's it. Because that's what's going to allow you to operate in this giving attitude and consciousness, right?
Yes.
You can give from a place of stringency. You can give from a place of ritual and ceremony. Of course, CSC appreciates all giving, but we want you to experience the blessing of giving. We want you to experience the windows of heaven in you, through you, as you.
Yes.
So with that, I encourage us all to give as we see fit. You can go to our website, celebrationsc.org/give, and give what amount feels good. You can also text to give, 347-744-9500. That is a minimum of $10 to text to give. I love the text to give because it's just quick, easy, it's fast, it's just boom, 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 boom,
Right.
boom,
Set
right?
it, set it, forget it, and let it.
Right? And so whichever way you choose to give, whichever channel you choose to give through, whichever day you choose to give, right? Let us affirm this powerful truth right here and right now. All the money that I use
All the money that I use
returns to me multiplied
returns to me multiplied
in a never-ending cycle
in a never-ending cycle
of increase and what? Enjoyment.
and enjoyment.
With that, we say amen,
Amen.
ashe,
Ashe.
and so it is.
So it
And
is.
so it is. We give in love and we receive love. We give in joy, we receive joy.
Yes.
The money is also about joy,
Yes.
our general well-being. And that's what prosperity is. I pray that it goes well with you, that you prosper, even as your body prospers, that your soul prospers, that all goes well with you in body, mind, spirit, heart. This has been powerful. This has
It
been
has.
so cool. So cool.
Oh, wow.
We love you all.
We love you
appreciate you all.
And you know, somebody's got a birthday coming up this week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's my birthday week.
Yay. Shout out to PG. Make sure you stop by his pages, and give him some love.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Officially on Tuesday is my
Tuesday.
birthday. It's my Obama year.
Yes.
Fo.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. All right. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We look forward to seeing you on the prayer call on Wednesday morning. And of course, next Sunday, we will be right back here looking at the next chapter. And also then at 1 o'clock next Sunday, we will have the God Talk. You can go to our webpage if you want to sign up for the mailing list to make sure that you get that information on Friday.
And don't forget to email us your prosperities, the ways your life has been changed. As I say, don't forget to hype your healing.
Yeah.
Any changes, any awarenesses that you have, and how they've unfolded in your life. We can't wait to hear
Yes.
how it's going in your world and how prosperous and joyful and amazing you are.
All right, y'all. Have an amazing day.
Love you. Bye for now.